Today, we're gonna weave a Christmas tree. So I don't know who the first person to come up with this idea is. If you do, you can let me know in the comments below. But we're going to be using the larger of our spruce and linen flat pack frame looms. And I'm going to make this actually in the shape of a Christmas tree. So I've never done this before, so we're on this adventure together. But I grabbed some paper here so I could kind of make myself a bit of a template. I want to, make sure that I'm weaving an even triangle and not just kind of random. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just tape these two pieces of paper together. And then I'm just gonna grab a ruler and some sort of pencil, and I want to figure out sort of the shape of this triangle. So now I need to put a warp on this. I do want my warp, I think, to have an odd amount of warp strings so that there's actually like a center string. Now I think I'm just gonna do a single warp. I'm gonna use 4/8 cotton. So this is the thinnest warp string that I like to use. And the reason for that is just because I'm gonna be using some pretty chunky materials and I want the materials to speak. I don't really want the warp string to really show. So I'm gonna go ahead and warp this and then we'll get started weaving. Now that my loom is warped, I'm just adding some tape so that my loom doesn't shift around on me, because that's one of the most annoying things ever. Okay, in front of me, I have a ton of different materials that I grabbed, and they're all sort of in the blues and whites. So I'll pull a few of them so that you can see. But I kind of wanted to do something more in this color palette, so sort of that like icy kind of look. So lots of blue and off-white, and I think it'll just help the piece remain cohesive as well. Now, we need to do the trunk first, and I need to figure out how wide that's gonna be. I think before I get started though, I'm actually going to trace this triangle onto the loom. So I think I'm gonna butt up the triangle with just this top bar on my loom. So I'm gonna grab a marker, and I have sort of this water soluble marker, but you can totally use Sharpie too, because hopefully the way that we're weaving this, you won't actually see the marker anyway. But I have the water soluble one, so I'm just gonna use that. And I'm gonna find the center string. So I have 41 warp strings, so it's gonna be the 21st warp string in. So that's my center warp string here. So I'm actually just following the triangle lines and just making marks on my warp. So then I know where to sort of like start shrinking this down as I go. Oh, and I just realized something. How is this gonna hang from one string? That might not work. I think what might have to happen is these warp strings, these three, might have to come together, because obviously we need, see, now I'm thinking I shouldn't have made it an odd amount of warp strings, because we want a loop at the top, right, to hang this from. Okay, let's see if Pinterest can tell me. So here's the deal. I think what I'm gonna have to do at the very top is I'm gonna have to just shift this slightly and have both of these warp strings finish off the top so that there's an actual loop to hang this from. And even though it's not perfectly centered, I'm just gonna go with it and see what happens. So you guys can just like learn from me if it doesn't work. So I have my triangle marked. Will I be able to see it as I weave? I don't know. Because sometimes the warp strings start to, I already can't see it. Cool. My warp strings twisted on me when I marked them the first time. So I'm just going back and marking the string all the way around so that hopefully even if they twist as I'm weaving, I can still see where I'm headed. I think I'm gonna use this dark sort of tealish color for the trunk, because I think it would just look good to have it grounded with something a little bit darker. And I'm just gonna use plain weave, I think, for this part. but I'm gonna start off with a twining stitch just to make sure that that bottom is nice and secure. But when I'm done, I will be like knotting up those warp strings and tucking them in, because, you know, with all the weight coming down on it, I just don't want it to slip. So I'm gonna take a couple arm lengths. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 9 strings. And I wanna make sure I have enough at the bottom that I can still tie them. It's gonna be like a little bit tight, but I think I'm okay with that. Okay, I think that's enough rows for the trunk. It's a pretty small trunk, but I'm okay with that. So now we need to just basically start weaving the tree. I don't think that the bottom of the tree needs to be perfectly straight, so I'm gonna try to not worry about that too much. However, I do wanna sort of think about what stitches I'm doing at the very bottom, since those ends will need to be tied and tucked later. So like, do I wanna start with a twining stitch, something that just keeps everything secure, or do I just wanna go for it? Let's just start with this one. Let's see where this goes. I do think like starting with some plain weave at the bottom might be a good idea. So it's something that's kind of secure even if I don't do an actual twining stitch. So I think I'll just go for it. I love this Boucle yarn. This one and a lot of the materials, actually a good chunk of the materials I'm gonna be using today are from Unfettered Co. And we do have discount codes for you for them. So make sure you read the description to get those. So to start building an organic shape, what I'm doing is first went over the string over here, and now I'm like skipping a few so that it starts sort of like curving up this direction. And the more you skip, the more dramatic that angle, or sorry, the more shallow that angle is going to be. And I'm also paying attention to my marks for the actual triangle for this piece. Okay, so I have my first little section and I quite like it so far. Loving these colors. So now I want to do something over here next, because I want to make sure this bottom is like gonna work well, and then we'll start getting a little bit more chunky with the materials, I think. So I do have this like really pretty, this is ripped up recycled cotton ribbon. I don't entirely know where these two colors are from. I can't remember. I've bought them from different places and I used to sell it, but Unfettered Co has lots of them too. Now I kind of want to decide if I want to start adding in those off-whites, or like, will I end up wanting to just mainly do the blues throughout this piece? That's really the question. But I do think, since I used like a yarn here and a yarn here, something with a little bit of a different texture I think would be good next. And now I still could utilize plain weave, because I think because this is so kind of floofy, it'll still look different enough from this side. But the question is, do I use the blue? Do I use the off-white? I actually kind of like the off-white, so let's try that. So I just met up with this previous color, so there's no like gap between them. I do think that looks different enough from this that I can get away with doing just plain weave again. Now I don't want to make both sides look identical, so I might call this good. All right, so now I think I can start using other materials and like get a little bit chunkier. So maybe the next thing we should do is add some roving perhaps here in the middle. So I'm gonna grab a length of this and then I'm gonna split it, which is something I always like to do because it saves you on roving for one, and it doesn't overcrowd your warp as much. So I'm just trying to find a fairly natural split point and just gently pull it apart. It's not always perfect, but that's okay. Now I need to decide what stitch. I'm kind of thinking the like over 2, under 2, and then like pulling up little loops. And I'll link some videos. Actually, what I'll do is, we just made a video that was 6 weaving stitches. It's the ones I use the most often. So I'll link that video so you guys can check that out, because those are probably gonna end up being basically all the stitches I use in this one as well. Okay, I think I'm liking where this is headed. It's always like interesting doing something new, but I'm kind of wanting to do these just little sections of organic shapes. But now we need to figure out where we're going next. So I'm looking at all my materials in front of me. I'm wondering if I should do something off-white next, maybe. So we could do that, or I could bring in this color. I feel like these types of weavings, it's like there's so many different routes you could take with it, and probably a lot of them, if not most of them, are gonna look good. And I think that's honestly what's so difficult about organic style weavings is the options are kind of endless, and there's just so many things that'll work. And so I think personally that's where I get hung up, and maybe you guys feel the same way. And you can spend so much time staring at being like, what's next? And sometimes I think maybe it's just, you just gotta make a choice and just go with it. So what do I wanna do though? It's still happening, even though I just said all of that. So this is a like actual felted roving yarn. So I could do that just for the fact that it's gonna be a little bit more chunky. Let's give it a try. Normally, I would probably go like double this up and do like the double sumac, but I think I'm gonna do this differently this time. I'm just gonna do it with one strand. Okay, I'm liking how this is looking, actually. It sort of looks a little bit more random than I feel like sumac often does. There's something interesting about this because usually I try to do sumac on a very like, at least with yarn, very like linear. And I'm kind of liking how this is a little bit different. So I have some white over here. Now we need to sort of fill in, I think, something on this side. The question is here too, how many different materials do I want to actually use, and do I want to just start repeating them already? Because I could do that. I could do knotting. Knotting might be a good idea right here. Maybe that's what we'll do next. So let's try doing knotting with this felted yarn. I don't think I've done that before. So literally I'm just gonna go ahead and tie a bunch of overhand knots into this. And the beauty of this is you don't have to necessarily spread the knots evenly. You can do some like really close together and some further apart, and that'll just give more of a random texture to it, which I think looks really great. And I'm gonna weave it over 2 under 2. And this stuff is a little annoying to weave because it gets really caught on the warp strings, but I think it's worth it. And I always like to try to make sure that these knots are sitting on top of the warp so that we're getting all the texture in the front of the piece instead of it disappearing into the back. All right, so I think that I want this one to come more toward the center because I don't want it to just be sort of like, you know, one on the side, one on the side, one in the middle, one on the side, one on the side, one in the middle. So I'm thinking it might be a good idea to just sort of try to bring this one over. So it's gonna be a bit of an odd shape, but that's kind of the point of an organic shape, is they are a little bit odd. So I'm gonna trim off here, and then I'm gonna untie all of these knots and just tuck this back in here. I've done some more chunky stitches, so I think it would be a good idea to bring in some more plain weave now, maybe just out in the center even. Let's get some more of this darker color in because I don't want it to just be like this random chunk at the very bottom. So I think I'll bring some of this in. Where do I go next? I do think I need to bring in, like what I'm trying to decide is if I should bring in another roving and do more chunks here, or if I just want to do the, like repeat the blue kind of up here. And I'm not entirely sure. I do think like something white-ish needs to be here, but I don't know that I want to repeat this already over here because then it's going to be sort of exactly the same shape. So maybe I should try the roving. I don't know, you guys. I am just winging this, which is always quite an adventure. So I want to go over these two, and then under two, over two, under two. I don't know if I love it. Maybe it's okay. Maybe now I need to do something to fill in this center, which is kind of what I said I didn't want to do. Okay, maybe that's all right. So I definitely think I should do some sort of plain weave over top of this area. So maybe this would be a good time to bring this back in. I'm just always trying to create some sense of balance to a piece, and I do think there's definitely like a time and place for the whole thing to be entirely random, especially if the colors go well together. But I don't have infinite like materials in these colors, so I'm trying to like I said, sort of start repeating the colors and just really look at it and think, does it feel balanced? And what I mean by that is like, so this is really chunky. So now we have something really chunky in the middle and on this side. So I know I'm gonna have to bring in something chunky on the other side at some point, because otherwise it's gonna feel weirdly heavy over here. And then when we're talking colors, same thing, we have like some white. See how the white is sort of jumping around the piece? And then same with the like, there's a lighter blue and a lighter blue. So I'm just trying to sort of somewhat evenly spread the colors and textures throughout the piece. I think that's the best way to explain how I have come to approach these organic style weavings. Okay. That's kind of an interesting shape. I think that works. So again, cutting off the excess, and I think I'm just gonna go through here. Now, so it's going up to here. So this is where we're headed. We're headed like this. So I'm like, I feel like maybe I could get away with more roving. I don't love, I was gonna say I don't love that like there's roving in the middle and then here, but maybe it's fine. Maybe it's fine. I think the right choice is to just try it and see what it looks like. But already I'm like, I think there's maybe not enough space between here and here. So, I think there needs to be something a little bit more here before I bring in the roving again. So is that this? Oh, I actually think maybe it's that. In retrospect, maybe I should have made the like sections a little bit smaller, because as we get closer to the top, they're just not gonna be able to be that big. But at the same time, I still really love where this is going. Now I think we can bring this in. Okay. I feel really excited about this piece. Like I don't know what it is. It's like that little bit of a imposter syndrome where every time I go to sit down and make something, I'm like, is this gonna be good or is it gonna suck? But love this. Okay, I do think there needs to be some plain weave over top of this at some point. And I think we need to bring that dark color in at some point again over here. Maybe I should do a little bit of this here and then do this. Maybe it should be this. Let's try it. Okay, now I think I need to do something that goes all the way across, because I'm realizing it's like, did you know what that means? So I'm kind of thinking maybe now I could add this straight across, and then we'll get some more plain weave in there, because I do think we need a little bit of that structure. I don't have knotting anywhere in this vicinity, so maybe that would be a good opportunity to add some here. Like now we're kind of at the point where I'm just trying to like literally fill in the gaps of like what needs to be brought back in. We are so close to the top, so we're kind of trying to come in at this angle, and I kind of realized, like I was trying not to do, but as it gets skinnier, that's really all you can do unless you're making like really small sections. This side looks like, look how nice this angle is. And then on this side, what the heck happened? I'm like, how come this one doesn't look as good as that one? Let's just look. See how like, look how like this side is so perfect. Why did this side go so wonky? And is it as wonky as I feel like it is? It's not that bad, but there's definitely like in this section here, it's like there just isn't quite enough to fill it out. Where's the end? Could I just bring this end back and like loop it back in again? And let's see if that helps. So I don't want to go all the way back there and take all of that apart. Now I'm thinking maybe it was this blue row. Maybe this wasn't the problem. That's looking better. That's looking better. I think it's gonna be okay. I think it's gonna be an imperfect tree. I think it's fine. All right, what are we doing next? So I'm just trying to look to see what yarns we haven't used in a while. It's been a little bit for this. Yeah, I think it's maybe the cotton string, or sorry, ribbon, then the boucle, and then topping it off with the, I think that'll look good. It's not as like I said, I like to make these pieces so they feel like everything is evenly spread throughout, but I don't think it needs to be perfect. I think it's gonna be okay. So let's just do that. I don't love these next to each other because there's not a whole lot of contrast going on, but maybe the trick is like we do some of this and then like a little ball of the blue. Ooh, it doesn't feel very balanced right now. Would this have looked better here? Because these chunks of roving, like they really stick out, that's kind of what's throwing me off. Like this feels very flat. So now I'm like, maybe the right choice would have been, maybe we eliminate. Okay, I think I have to back up, you guys. It's just not feeling quite right. I'm kind of thinking we just don't worry about repeating this cotton ribbon. And instead, we go to the merino roving, which is doing something weird here. And then maybe now we add this yarn and then we finish it off. Yeah, I think that's it, you guys. Ooh. I'm so pleasantly surprised about this one. I absolutely love it. We are so close to being done. So, where am I going with this piece? I think I could definitely go around here. What I want to do is actually end not on this one string. I want to end with these two. So then I can tie like an overhand knot, and this will be how it hangs. So I just need to finish this sort of strategically in that way. But I definitely feel like finishing it off with the wool roving was the right choice because it can kind of, like you see how I'm able to just really manipulate, like I could just be done right there, and maybe I am. It's not going quite up to our marks, but I'm kind of okay with that. Like, what does it look like if we were to just end right here? Or do I need one more little, I think I need to go around here once more so that it looks more like a point. What does it look like if we do this? I think that might have been the ticket. Okay. I love it. I love this so much more than I would have expected to. Okay, super happy with where we're at. We need to tuck in all the ends. So I'm gonna just sort of clean off my table a bit in order to do that so that it's not just like pure and utter chaos like it is now. Okay, so I'm ready to flip this over. I don't wanna crush the merino wool roving too much. So I'm thinking I might prop up the loom while I tuck in all the ends. I just realized that here at the top, this is going over both warp strings. So when I tie my knot, this could still slip off. So I think all I'm gonna do, so let's bring out this tail. Thankfully we have a nice long tail. I'm gonna bring it under that. And then back over. Let's just see what that looks like. And then if I tuck this back in here, what are we left with? I think that'll be okay. So basically now when I tie this knot, it's not gonna, this won't be able to just slip off of the knot. Does that make sense? So let's find some things to prop this up. And I'm gonna flip this over. And now we have, you know, basically pure chaos. I'm gonna start with the wool roving because I find that that always makes the chaos feel far less chaotic. So we'll start there and just continue tucking in all these ends until they're all away. I'm ready to start taking this off the loom. Very nervous. I think I'm going to slide it off the bottom first if I can. I don't think it's too tight on here. And then I'm gonna just start knotting everything up. So I think I'm gonna knot the bottom first. So I'm gonna make sure everything's sitting how I want it to be sitting. Okay, I'm gonna start doing it. Here we go. Now, if your warp is loose enough, you can always slip them over the notches like this. But if your warp is really tight, I definitely recommend, actually, I'm just gonna start tying these now because I'm a little worried. If your warp is too tight, you're gonna want to remove the bottom notch bar or cut it off the loom because you don't wanna break a notch. So what I'm doing here is I'm just tying overhand knots and I'm going to be tucking these in after. Okay, so I can see that because I did an odd amount of warp strings, this one is attached to the next one over. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna cut open this loop and tie all 3 of these together. Okay, so now I'm gonna slip all these off. We're gonna start with the top one just so I don't lose it. Oh, I did that wrong. How did that happen? Okay, so our tree is going to be hung by these 2 loops, I think. Let's get this off the loom and see where we're at. So I think I did something a little wonky here. Actually, no, I think I did it correct. Okay, I still don't know how this is gonna hang, but I don't wanna hold it up until everything is secure. But I'm kind of thinking now maybe I should hang it from these 2 loops, but maybe that won't look as good. Maybe this will look better. I think it gets hung by just these 2. Now I'm gonna go along and I'm going to be tying in groups of 2, all of these together, again into overhand knots because we don't want anything to slip out. Okay, so far so good. Now I need to come to the other side and do the same thing. Okay, so now what we need to do is flip this over and tuck in all of these warp strings. So it's quite a few. It is time for the moment of truth. I'm gonna put all the stuff away and let's flip this over and re-floof it a little bit. Oh my gosh, though, I feel like this is super cute. I'm gonna try to adjust, like this is sticking out a little more than what I want it to, so I'm gonna try to adjust that just a little bit. That looks a bit better there. Yeah, that looks better. I am so excited. Okay, the real moment of truth for me is, can we hold this thing up and not have it like be a wonky shape? So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Ah, it worked. It worked. Oh my gosh. I didn't think it would be this simple. I don't know why in my head, you know, it was gonna like flop all weird and be a strange shape. But anyway, check out this video next to learn all the stitches I used in this piece.